All right, welcome to this episode of Art and Victory. I am joined by some fantastic panelists who will introduce themselves in a second. My name is Nabeel Jamal, co-host of the OKC Foodcast, and go ahead.
I'm Brian Gililland with the Okie Show Show podcast.
I'm Anna Farha with Localites OKC.
And I'm Kayla Coffey, also with Localites OKC.
I'm Dennis Spielman with Tales Unveiled.
Ooh.
Spooky.
All right, so let's get this started. First, let's just talk about what got you started. And, well, probably first, what's your podcast about?
So my podcast is we explore the inner workings of the film and music industry in the Midwest, not just Oklahoma, but Texas and Kansas and Arkansas and New Mexico. There's a lot of surprising little film industry things happening all over the place. So we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of that. And then we play improv at the end of the show, which is super fun.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, our show, we started about 2 years ago, and it's about local events and things happening in Oklahoma City, greater metro area. So we cover new businesses, restaurants, breweries, events put on by nonprofits, fundraisers, lots of different type of stuff that's happening around the city.
Tales Unveiled is a docudrama. So myself and my co-host, we actually play fictional characters, but we interview real people about their ghost stories. So not is it just like a typical like interview series. There's a bit of a plot line and narrative, like why do we go to this place and why do we go to that place? So it just kind of just makes telling of Oklahoma's, urban legends and spooky stories in just kind of a fun fictional way.
Nice. All of those sound very interesting.
And you subscribe to all of them, don't you?
I do, actually. How'd you know? So I think one of the most important and curious questions a lot of times, what got you started? How'd you come up with this idea? How'd you actually get it launched? I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of people.
So for Okie Show Show, I actually came from terrestrial radio back in the day. And I just always really enjoyed that platform. And then improv and all that kind of stuff. And since I work in the film industry, I work alongside all of these just nuggets of wisdom and joy that nobody knows about. Nobody gives a crap about the gaffer or the grip or the production designer or the art worker or something like that. So that's where it started, was wanting to kind of shed light, put a spotlight on these incredibly talented and also incredibly funny people, and just kind of give the young people that are wanting to get into the film and music industry tips and tricks that I didn't know whenever I was starting out. And there was a bit of bitterness in me that was like, I wish I had something. I'm going to make that for the next generation. It's going to come from me, see? And I turn into a...
Do you use that voice on the podcast?
I do. Every time I get upset, I turn into either Dr. Farnsworth from Futurama. I don't know. But
I was going to say Old Man Withers is how
right, yeah.
it's coming out.
I'll tell you a thing or two. So that's where it started, and then it's kind of grown over there. We're in season 4, and we've been doing it for about 5 years now. And so it started off with having, local film industry workers and local musicians and stuff on the show. And now it's gotten large enough where we're actually talking to, we just had Alex McNichol from, he is from the show. He's on The Fifth Wave, the movie, but he was also on the show with Jeffrey Tambor, where he plays a transgendered... Transparent. So he was one of the actors on Transparent. We've had one of the actors from Big Bang Theory on, and so it's just kind of grown over the years. And all these people are still connected to Oklahoma, which is really cool. So it's kind of like the goal is to not just give people tips and tricks now. Now it's to inspire people to say, this could be you if you put your mind to it and you do things wisely.
Right. They did it. Why can't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I love that story. That was great, especially the voices. So we don't have any characters to go along with ours, but
We are our own characters.
Exactly. We're the main characters of our own story. So Anna and I were both kind of already the people to our friends and family and coworkers who knew everything that was going on, knew the hottest new restaurant, knew the new organization, knew, all of the fun nonprofits to volunteer at and how to be involved in the community. And so we had been talking amongst each other about how to turn that into something else when someone called out Ferris O'Brien on Twitter for not having any female, or not very many, I think there was like 1 or 2 at the time, female radio show hosts on The Spy. And I tweeted him and was like, Anna and I should have a show. We would totally show up and do that. And Ferris was like, cool, sounds good. And a lot of other people were like, well, we want shows too. And so we ended up having this like whole meeting at RIP Slaughter's Hall, where a ton of people came in and like pitched show ideas to The Spy, and he was like super receptive and was like, whoever.
It was a room of at least 20 people.
Yeah, it was a lot of, there was like probably 10, 15 shows pitched.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that, yeah.
Yeah, and Ferris was like, anyone who wants to come by, record a demo. If you're serious, like, let's do this thing. And we found out later we were the only people who actually followed through and recorded a demo. But so we recorded our demo, and he was like, hey, this doesn't really fit for a radio show, but this would be perfect as a podcast. Because we were like trying to fit in a music element. Anna has a background in college radio, and I took a class in podcasting, and so I kind of like knew what was going on. So we were The Spy's first ever podcast, which was a lot of fun to help, pave the way. There have been a couple more that have come, some come and gone, and whatnot. But building a podcast out of a radio network has been like a really unique thing for us.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you went through like a little podcast Shark Tank, and perseverance paid off, obviously.
I was going to say follow through paid off. Like a lot of people are like, ooh, I have ideas. Ooh, people like want to know what I'm talking about. But It's like Anna and I were serious about it from the start, and we like wrote our script and did it. And I guess a lot of people didn't have that much foresight. They were just like, I want to talk about stuff and
they'll
not
just
really
let me
try.
do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I got started with Tales Unveiled because I'd been kind of like listening to like all the local podcasts, and I was like, wanted to do, because I have a travel show uncovering Oklahoma, and that's what mostly people know me for. And I've kind of played around, maybe do a podcast for that, but I was like, no, there's too many things that were similar to if I did uncovering Oklahoma as a podcast. I'd be with Local Lights and all these other shows. Kind of, I think it'd just be too crowded. And then
we beat you to it. Kidding.
Thank you for bowing for that.
So I decided to go a different direction, and I went to a direction that nobody else was doing, and that was more of a kind of a fictional narrative. And as far as I know, no one's still kind of doing sort of a fictional-based podcast here in Oklahoma. Although we interview real people about their ghost stories. We have this fun, fictional twist to it with our host.
Joff DeRoot.
That's Professor Joff DeRoot.
My favorite ongoing joke.
Yeah, and we just have stuff like that, and it just makes it more entertaining, and just to showcase, Oklahoma's history and ghost story, and just kind of promote tourism and in a different way. It's just been really fun, and been really enjoying it.
Nice. So let's go the other way this time.
All right.
We were getting quite a pattern down.
I mean, we can stick to it if you want. I was just trying to.
We'll just do a wave. Yeah, just whoosh, whoosh.
So, from the time you started to where you are right now, are you using? I think another big hurdle that people face sometimes is equipment, right? What I used to record on, obviously, it's not just good enough to record on your phone or sitting out in the middle of a big room. That's not good enough. So, what did you start with, and how did you make that better?
I actually started recording with my video camera for the first few episodes, and I happen to have good mics. I had a good like a boom mic and we just kind of like all shared that mic when we were doing interviews, and then eventually I upgraded into a Rode H6 so I can have multiple microphones, so everybody could have their own mic, and it was just audio, so the files were a lot smaller because I wasn't having to record video files, so that made my life a little bit easier. And as for mics, I used Shure, and I also got this one that I'm using right now, Rode. I love Rode. I use them for quite a bit of my stuff, so that's what I'm using right now.
Okay. And what would you say like your investment in that was? If you don't remember, that's okay.
I would say for like kind of just general rule of thumb. I mean, if you want like really good like setup, I would prepare yourself to invest like good like $500, to get the mics, cords, and all of that fun stuff.
But obviously, that's not like needed from the get-go.
No,
right?
and
once
in fact,
you get a little bit of traction, you kind of have a proven concept. You can be like, okay, I can go ahead and I feel a little more comfortable investing in this.
And you could, I know you were harking on it earlier, but I mean, your phone, if you get a good mic, because there's attachments for your phone, you can get a really good mic and use your phone as a recorder, and that works really well. So that's another a lot cheaper barrier to do it that way and get started.
Yeah.
So for us, the great part about us being part of the SPY is that we get to use their studio. And we've started out with that, and that's what we still are using now. There's 2 studios that are part of the SPY, and we're in one of the recording studios. And the mics I know they are Shure mics. I don't know which ones they are.
They're good.
Yeah, I mean, they've worked well for us, but we haven't had to choose any of that because it was provided for us. So.
And then we also have, one of those boards that you slide things up and down on.
A mixer?
A mixer, yes.
Nice.
We are not the technical people when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, we're borrowing it all. So it's not like we went and picked it out and we're like, did research and we're like, this is the mixer that we want for our show for this. We're just like so lucky to have the radio studio and to be able to leverage their equipment for our show.
I also want to add that there are several places, if you are starting and you do want to borrow equipment, there are several like businesses that are offering like podcast studios. So that's something, if you are interested, is to search around. Yeah, Citizens Bank.
Bank of Edmond is doing that.
Yeah, I know some other places are going to be offering it soon. I've been heard, and I think, and there's some places I'm not aware of, but that is another option for some people too.
Yeah, a lot of co-working spaces.
Yeah, co-working. Yeah,
a little studio that you can rent out for hours at a time. Yeah, it's really nice.
I need to get a list of those. If you could write them all down, that'd be great. Now, so for me, fortunately, I'm also a professional sound mixer and boom operator for film, so I have like industry standard mics for field stuff. Whenever I first started out, I was using dynamic mics just like this, SM58s. Now, I'm with the Mostly Harmless Media Network, so we pretty much just use their stuff, which are all Rode mics.
Fancy pants.
It's fancy. It's real. It's nice. But whenever we're doing Skype interviews, which now we're doing a lot more of, we have the SM7Bs, which are the radio mics that you guys probably have at the SPY, and that's just that. I don't recommend that. If you're wanting to start off in podcasting, I wouldn't recommend dropping thousands of dollars. I was just fortunate in that that's what I do for a living, so I already had a load of equipment for the transition over. But there was a bit of a transitionary period of using these handheld mics and then throwing it all in post and using Audition. I edit on Adobe Audition and everything.
It's going to be the next question. Stop jumping ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, throw a little EQ on there, some mastering, and it makes it sound nice and slick.
Nice. Something to add, I started with a Blue Yeti, and it's like $100 microphone. Right? Great for 1 or 2 people. As soon as you jump to that third person, tanks. So just an option if you're one person. So you kind of touched upon this. What do you use to edit your files after they're recorded?
Adobe Audition. CC. 2019. About to be upgraded. Whenever this comes up.
All right, I'll handle ours for us. So we record everything in the SPY studio using Cool Edit Pro. And sometimes if we have time, we'll stay there, edit with that. But generally, we're recording late at night and we come out early the next morning. And so we'll export all those files and I'll just pull it into GarageBand on my Mac and throw it all together that way. And then upload it to SoundCloud.
Dude, GarageBand it's way better than people, and I'm talking like even from the professional standpoint, like GarageBand is totally acceptable. Like I'm shocked at how Well, no, I mean, like, I'm really shocked at, like, even from the music production capabilities that you can do all sorts of stuff.
Extra stuff. Like, it's mostly just our vocals, our interviews, and then we have a transition music. But like, we're not like throwing in a bunch of sound effects or like things that maybe you would need a more sophisticated thing for. Ours is pretty rudimentary as far as the actual sound files go.
But we're still very proud to be able to have such a quick turnaround time.
That's it. You said you guys record and then you turn it around the next day?
Yeah.
That's
the
crazy.
Next morning.
That's impressive.
My hat comes off to you because I can't do that.
I would do it that night, except that I'm too tired.
Right.
It's easier to get
That's
up
my
early.
problem. I'm lazy.
Yeah, my podcast takes a good day or two to edit because I add music and dramatic pauses, and then I stop and record some narration to like describe what people look like or what the scene's like. I use Final Cut Pro, which is more for film, but it helps me visualize, and I can like make like little like video tracks, and it's also super helpful. Like I can also export the podcast as a video file to make like little things for social media. So that's partly why I use it.
Yeah, I think for those that are starting out, GarageBand costs how much to download? It's like
it's free. Yeah,
it's free.
Yeah, it's free if you have.
It's
free,
free,
yeah.
people. Use your phone to record. You put it on GarageBand. You throw it out. Done.
You're good to go.
SoundCloud. Boom.
There you go.
Well, that's actually, so do you use SoundCloud as well? Because I know some people don't. And that's a choice that we made to get our RSS feed out. I'm sorry, I'm like going to jump on there.
It's all right. That's all right.
I
All
just
right.
like want to
'cause,
know.
I mean, that's the progression, right? You recorded it, you edited it. Where do you upload it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whenever I started out, I used Squarespace to get it out on iTunes, and iTunes was kind of like the main export. I didn't jump on the SoundCloud bandwagon until probably about a year ago, because I realized how much of a tool it is. SoundCloud is incredibly effective. It's easily searchable. You don't have to have an iPhone to be able to listen to this stuff. Now we're on Libsyn, so Libsyn puts out all of our stuff to like every Stitcher, every downloadable podcast platform known to man. But even then I still had to go in there and say, put this on SoundCloud, you. And that's how I did it. I gave that Libsyn a talking to.
Yeah, I started out using Podbean just because I wasn't familiar with it, and then I was paying like all this extra money for hosting it, and then I was like, well, why don't I just put this on my actual website? And I started doing it that way, which is a lot harder if you're not really like a technical person, but it's cheaper is the benefit, because instead of paying two hosting providers, I'm just paying my one website hosting provider. And granted, you do have to get the RSS feed and submit it manually to Stitcher and Spotify and all of that.
You got to do it manually to Spotify no matter what, it seems like.
Yeah. And Spotify is tough to get on. For me, like on our show, we do every once in a while we do script reads for licensed material and stuff like that. And Spotify is really hardcore about licensed material. So if you are wanting to get on Spotify, just know that you probably should not use licensed music unless you have the proper paperwork, because we're still not on Spotify. 5 years in, we're still not on Spotify. Those sons of guns.
It was the last one we were able to get on. Yeah. But we started out with SoundCloud, and we still host it through SoundCloud, but it was always also through Apple and then Google Play and eventually Spotify.
Yeah.
But yeah, SoundCloud has worked pretty well for us.
And if you're wanting to get on iTunes, it's kind of interesting to me because it seems like there's a perception that to get on iTunes, you have to be somebody, and that's not the case at all. If you have a Squarespace website, it's actually there's an RSS feed feature built in so that you could submit your RSS feed through your blog site, through your blog page, to iTunes. And it does take some time for them to go through and approve it and everything. I think for us it took about a month or two.
And they've gotten a lot faster because when I did Art and Victory, like it was a couple days.
Yeah.
And that seems to be pretty standard around all across the board through all the platforms. It's gotten a lot easier. Like to get on Spotify now. They've kind of updated, make much more publicly accessible. Because originally on Spotify, you had to have like 6 episodes.
Yeah, and
but now,
like X amount of downloads. And
yeah,
it was crazy.
and now they just made it. They just kind of opened up the floodgates essentially and let anybody
follow up
submit.
with them.
Yeah.
Those sons of guns.
With Apple though, our cover photo is still wrong for half of the people, and we can't
Really?
figure out why. We
I
changed
had
it
that
about
issue too. Yeah.
5 episodes in, we had a new title card, and for I would say about half of our people, it's still not right, even though I've submitted it like probably 5 or 6 times over the last 2 years.
I think that's the most annoying part about any of the iTunes and Google Play is that there's that lengthened turnaround time. It just takes forever for stuff to get done. Whereas with SoundCloud, you
upload
could
it
change your photo in real
constantly.
time.
Yeah, you can change your photo for every single episode.
Yeah.
And they're super chill with it.
Yeah.
Nice. I need to get on SoundCloud. But there's also a WordPress plugin. It's called Simply Seriously Podcasting, and that's what I use. It gives you an RSS feed, and you can plug it into wherever you need to plug it into. So.
Yeah, mine's a WordPress. I use Podlove is the one that I use.
Yeah. Another benefit, before we move on, another benefit of SoundCloud is that you can actually track your download numbers.
Yes, you can.
Which you cannot do on iTunes. And it drives me freaking
Yes.
bonk. I can
Yes.
zero in on the country that downloaded my freaking episode.
And how long they listen to it.
Right, but they will not release your subscription numbers.
Yeah.
Like, I think we're doing well.
Yeah.
Right.
So Simply Seriously Podcasting has Simply Seriously Stats, and they track listens. But
Yeah.
that's whenever someone listens to it, not how long, or if they actually listen to the whole thing.
Right.
You hit play and stop, you'll get a listen.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
awesome.
do that.
I was going to say, it seems like something's showing.
So how long on average, I mean, you have a super quick turnaround time. You record the night before and you release the morning after. How long does it usually take you to get an episode out? And let's talk about the formats of the show, because yours is a weekly show, and you have seasons. So let's talk about the format. How did you come to this conclusion, and walk us through that process?
Can we jump in quickly since the first half of ours is answered? Wednesday night recording, Thursday morning it comes out. We start off the show with what we did the week before, and so it's very conversational between us. What's going on? Where we volunteered? Where we ate lunch? Like kind of a look into our lives in case you weren't watching our Instagram stories. And that's a really fun part, especially if we weren't together and we get to like catch up with each other, and so that's great. And then
And to recap the things that we probably talked about on the show the week before.
that we actually went to.
Yeah.
Hey, we talked about this and said we would go, and then it's like holding us accountable. We actually
We
went.
actually do
We made
things.
it. And then we go into our rundown of events, and Anna does so much research for the show every single week, coming up with events Thursday through the next Wednesday that are kind of the exciting things that we think you should know about, and we think that our audience is definitely going to enjoy going to, and so we want them to hear about it. We do a condensed version on the show, and then we have a full version every week on our blog and then on our Twitter thread of events. Because sometimes, especially like Saturdays and Sundays, we could do nothing but talk about events for 15 minutes. And then we move into our interview portion. And so we always interview someone. If we have a theme to the episode, it's related to that. If it's somebody opening a new business, one of the business partners, or someone hosting a large event, we have on people from the nonprofit that it's benefiting, the co-chairs of the event, something like that. And then we wrap everything up with our happenings, which is where we keep everybody in the know about what new businesses have announced that they're coming into the Oklahoma City area, or businesses that are closing, so people stay on top of that. Because it's impossible to keep up with everything. We do a really good job of trying to have it all in one place for you. And so with the amount of work we put into it, we can't imagine the layperson doing that on their own.
The people that don't believe there's a lot happening in Oklahoma, there's a lot happening in Oklahoma.
So much. Like I said, I'm having a hard time too keeping up with everything, and then especially with the flood of new restaurants that's just been opening up. It's been crazy. But yeah. So for us, we're probably one of the longer productions in terms of like how long it takes us to make an actual episode, because it is partly fictional. Most of our script and stuff is a lot of improvised. Some of the narration, I do script that out. But a lot of times we're just kind of like finding the story as we go along and do it. We schedule an interview. I spend like a half a day to a full day editing it. Then I send it over to Jeff, and he listens to it and gives me feedback. And then I'll either change things or make things, and then send it back to him. And then it goes up online. I do it in seasons because again, it takes a good 3 days to 3-4 days to make one episode. So we just do like 10 to 12 episodes a season. So this year we're pushing for. We've been doing weekly episodes, and we just record a whole bunch of interviews all at once. And I've just been editing them in between all my other shows that I do, and that's just kind of how our workflow is.
Nice. See, doing fictional or doing production, like stuff that has like actual production to it, takes a lot of work.
It is very time consuming.
That's why we decided early on to do just improv, because we do little sketches and stuff on our show, but it's improv. So like, there's no writing involved. It's just us pulling stuff out of our butts. But our format has actually changed quite a bit since its conception when we started back in 2015. Originally, it was just me hosting, and I would have guests on, and we would talk about a particular topic, but then I had jokes written in, and it was... Ugh. You don't have to go back and listen to old episodes of Okie Show Show, because we've improved, thank God.
Well, I know what we're doing on the drive home.
Right.
I feel
Go to
like
episode 1 and listen how bad it is.
Everyone says that whenever they're like, hey, I've been doing podcasting, or we're X amount of episodes in, don't start with the first one.
Yeah.
Start with yeah.
Well, yeah, because like when I started out, I was like, this is going to be like a talk show. I had like all my cards and everything, and like I just really overthought it. Now, fast forward, 4 years in, now what we do, because we would also have the guests do improv, and if there's one thing that is extremely terrifying, it's doing improv out of nowhere with no experience whatsoever. So like, me and the co-host, Kelly Lawson, we've been performing improv for like a decade now. So for us, it's super, super comfortable. But for, if we were just to have you guys on, be like, okay, so now we're in a laundry room and you just found a gecko. Go! That's kind of terrifying.
Well, I've actually done improv, and I did pretty good when I was on your show. So.
You're
probably one of the more
fun.
prepared guests.
Yeah.
I would like to try it. I took one improv class, and I enjoyed my parts, but everyone else kept messing stuff up, and it was so stressful for me. So I'm like, I won't do improv with strangers.
Improv is super, super fun, but it can either be super, super fun, or it can be absolutely terrifying. If you've seen The Joker when he bombs, it feels like that. But
I would be the one that would just freeze.
Right. Yes. And but so now what we do is we have the guests come on the show, and we just do an interview with them. We talk about our topic and everything, and that usually lasts for about, I always tell them we're going to record for 30 minutes because it always ends up being 45. So we thank the guests, they say goodbye, they leave, and then we record our improv section, which is just about 10 minutes, and then we have an intro banter, which is about 5 minutes. So altogether, it adds up to at least an hour-long episode. And with the improv section, now what we do is I actually put sound effects and do some production stuff into it. So it's like listening to Whose Line, but with sound effects and stuff. And it's kind of slight sidebar, like, since my job is sound, like it's really important for me for each of those episodes to sound as good as humanly possible, because it's a calling card for me.
You've gotten hired because of your podcast.
I totally
too,
have. Yeah, I've gotten like paid work from from movies and stuff because they've listened to an episode of the podcast and been like, "Could you do production audio?" I'm like, "Heck yes, I can."
You're like, why do you think I'm doing this?
Exactly. It was all part of the plan to begin with.
Nice. So you kind of touched upon this, something that you learned through your journey of podcasting. If there's something else you would like to add to that, go ahead, or if that was your biggest takeaway so far. But then, we can kind of go down the line, and you can tell us what a golden nugget that you've picked up in your years of podcasting.
I think the most important thing that I've taken away from it is to stop obsessing over your numbers, because if you come at it from a standpoint of everyone wants to listen to what I have to say, and then your numbers come in and you're like, no one wants to listen to what I have to say, like it's going to make you want to quit real fast. So I always tell people, like, you know, whenever you're even on that episode 1, it's going to just accept the fact that it's going to sound like crap. Your first 10 episodes are going to sound like crap. You're not going to poop out a nugget of gold the first time. Just like if you ever attempt stand-up, you've got to be willing to suck before you get good. That's how you get good, is by accepting failure and accepting just sucking for a little while. So treat every episode like it has 1,000 downloads, and it's great. But you know, be self-aware of its quality and take lessons from that. Don't get bitter from the lack of listeners or, you know, your incredible numbers of listening, and just keep trucking forward. I hope that makes sense.
And not to like dissuade, it's gonna sound like crap, but it's all gonna be relative. Right. You look back at it a year down the line, you'll be like, oh, I see how much I've improved, which is a good thing.
That's the nature of improving.
Yes.
Is like at some point you have to have been bad to improve.
Yeah. So as you do it, you get better, and it's always a learning process. Right.
And I like to think we did start out amazing.
I know, I was like, speak for yourself.
It was perfect. Perfect,
No,
I tell you.
I haven't changed a thing.
We've definitely improved as far as not as much on mic. I think it's more like what we do off mic and how we schedule our guests. In particular, in the past, we plan out pretty far in advance, like a good 3 months usually. And with a weekly show, like we know what's coming up, what time of year it is, who we want to have on for certain types of things during certain times of year. So we plan things out very far in advance.
Plus, with specific studio time, it's like, here's when we will be at the radio studio. I don't know how other people do it, but we're like, we have to record this tonight because it comes out tomorrow. Yeah. So we have to plan in advance.
And you only have like a certain block that you can go in and record.
Exactly, because other people are using the studio. It's a whole radio station when we're not there.
And so with that,
People do other things.
we've kind of had to, it's like, in our minds, it's like, okay, we're planned this far out, but we don't actually reach out to the guest until maybe a month out, because if it's too far out, it's like they think they can do it, but then something comes up, or they'll forget, or if it's too close, then obviously we're panicking because we're planners, so we have to have that kind of buffer. But we've found that like that kind of 1 month to 3 weeks out really seems to be a good sweet spot, because again, we do know when we need to record. And so we're like, we can either do this Wednesday or this Wednesday, like when can you come? And if not, we can make accommodations when we need to, but it's really just following up with people in a timely manner, reminding them about things, when to show up, where to show up. We kind of do like a guest agreement that we send to people of like, these are the things you should be aware of, like that kind of helps make it like we're showing how serious we are about it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, taking it seriously from the start, I think was huge for us. Coming up with our format, sticking to our format. Of course, we're flexible when we need to be, but really having a vision for it and sticking to doing it consistently. We had exactly one episode in the last 2 years and 2 months that we did not come out, and our numbers dropped so dramatically from that. It was Thanksgiving Day. We because it's a Thursday show. It was our first year, our first Thanksgiving Day that we didn't have an episode, and just like watching those numbers plummet, we were like, we got to keep that consistency. So now we have like Friendsgiving episode on Thanksgiving, and we're out if it's a holiday, like whatever it is. The way people listen to podcasts, it's like, sure, it's Thanksgiving, but you still have to drive to see your family or hide from your family later in the day when you need a break from them, and you got to go put your headphones in the back bedroom or whatever. So no, is that just me? It's fine. But having that consistency to it. And I know we've seen with some other podcasts that can be where people struggle. And so I think that's something we had from the beginning, and something that we've learned was a good thing that we've done, being like hard asses about our consistency.
Nice. I think that is very important.
Yeah, consistency. I this year we've been doing it on every Friday. You know, when our first season, we kind of did like every other Friday. And I think doing just as long as you're consistent helps tremendously. Another thing on terms of scheduling that I've liked, it feels, one thing I learned was like sometimes it feels weird or like insulting to send reminders to people. So I've kind of, so if you're in that situation where you feel like weird, like to remind these people, like, hey, you got this thing, I actually word it in such a way where I'm not like reminding them. I basically say, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you at such and such time. If anything comes up last minute, here's my cell phone number. Give me a call. And I'm also kind of like you. I kind of, I have like a calendar of like, all right, these are things I want to do for Uncovering Oklahoma and Tales of Unveiled and all my other shows, and then. But so I don't contact these people, until, because if it's so far out, they're not gonna remember and all of that. I try to give them at least a couple weeks out in advance for interviews. Another thing I want to add for people that they want to do a podcast but they don't like the sound of their voice or something.
Get over it.
Yeah. You're gonna be listening to a lot of it.
And here's another, just wear headphones. If you're like the host, like wear headphones and listening to yourself and actually like listen to the whole thing as you're editing it, like you will get so much better on, how to pronunciate, like just by doing it.
Isn't it amazing how much like you start, as you're editing your episodes and you start listening to the way that you talk, you realize how insane you sound.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think I have a mental problem.
I say, love it.
Right.
Way too many times, and I can't stop. But it's because I listen back to some parts if I need to, but I usually just put our episode together and get it up, and I'm like, we just did it. It's fine.
We edit as we record it, too.
Yeah.
So we can... Which really we don't have to edit that much because we like it to be conversational and we're okay with if we mess up a little bit. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, and we've made peace with that. And I think it's made our show better.
I will say, on a technical side, for you, if you do hate your voice, proximity effect is a thing. So eat your mic whenever you're recording your own voice. Eat your mic, because losing that low end is going to make you sound tinny. In your own head, when you listen to your own voice, your voice is inside your head. So there is bass happening inside your head. There is bass happening the closer you are to your mic. So the farther you are away from your mic, the lower, the less low end you have. So if that makes sense, eat your mic. It'll sound a little better. It'll sound a little more like how it sounds in your head.
I also highly recommend listening back to your episode itself. Like, I tend to black out when we're recording. The next day, people will be like, who'd you interview? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, was I there or something? I don't know, whatever. So I always try to listen back to it when I'm writing our blog post about it, so I know what the heck we said. And then
I think you've just been drinking very heavily the entire time.
only
I
like
just get
half the
blackout
time.
drunk for every episode.
But
It's supremely entertaining.
Only when people bring us stuff.
only when we interview breweries, which is half the time. It's fine.
I notice quite a few breweries all the time.
Right. Or people that also like breweries and bring us beer. We do love beer. But then I listen back and sometimes, like, I have a favorite episode where I'm like, God, I was so hysterical on that. Like, good job, me. How'd you even do that?
I did awesome.
So you can either, like, maybe I'm just super self-centered and narcissistic, but, like, you can grow to love your voice.
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh no! I mean, I think that that's a natural thing. If you've been doing your own show for years, if you still despise the sound of your voice, and you've been doing it for several years, first of all, hats off to you to listen to something that you hate for that long.
Maybe they don't
God
listen to it. They
bless.
just put it on and set it and forget it.
Yeah, God has cursed me.
Yeah, I even do like some quick mic tips with my guests. Like, hold the mic with one hand, don't hold it with two. Because when people hold it with two hands, like, they make so many noises. Just I'm like, I give them some basic rules because you're used to doing things, but your guests, they're not used to being on mic. So you kind of got to go over some of that etiquette rules with them.
Using those arms, using mic stands and stuff is fantastic. Because like whenever Okie Show Show started out, everybody was on handheld mics as if we were all individual stand-ups. And like all you can hear through those episodes is just the clink, 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 clink of jewelry and just cabling and everything. And then I would go in there as, like, all right, I'm a sound guy. It's going to sound good. No! And it just sounds awful. And having to go in there and, like, take each one of those pings out and stuff. Ugh.
Yeah, we also give mic tips to our guests, and we kind of do a little mini test where we just make sure that, because we do have the mics that are in whatever holds them.
Those things are real cool.
Yeah, so we just kind of move that around and make sure it's right for them. Like, we don't want them touching it. And then we
Treat your guests like they're
Like 3-year-olds.
like they're small children. All right,
Well,
don't touch that. Don't.
yeah, because then if they might have some kind of nervous tick, and they might be like tapping on the table in front of them or doing things that are distracting, and so we try to kind of warn them about the things to be aware of.
How do you guys mic check with your people? Because we have a really fun routine that we do, and I just want to see like what you guys do.
For me, I mic check everything prior to the guest actually showing up, because like for us, my goal is for the guest to show up. Hi, nice to meet you. This is what's going to happen. Have a seat here. We're going to be doing this for so long. We're rolling. Go, and then cut, and bye.
Yeah, I usually just ask them about some of their favorite foods or just kind of touristy questions, just to kind of get to know them in a way. Just that way they're speaking naturally. Because if I have them like check, like
Yeah. Right.
It's important to kind of
it never sounds
Is it
the
time?
same.
Are we on yet?
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah.
I think it is important to kind of shoot the shiz a little bit with your shoot the breeze. We cuss on my show, so
We do on ours too.
Yeah.
I already did earlier. I'm sorry.
yeah.
We had
But,
to put that explicit rating on like episode 3. We were like,
Oh, for
fuck.
sure. Yeah. Well, and it's really funny because like every once in a while I'll try to get I'll try to get somebody from like a church to come on, and they'll be like, "So, do you guys cuss on the show?" I'm like, I'll bleep it. You're not gonna go to hell if you come on the podcast. I swear.
Promise it'll be fine.
I swear to God.
So we've started this thing. I can't remember. We did steal it from it. Yeah, we stole it from a guest who was like, well, here's how I always start off. So we get them in, we go through everything, we explain it, but then when we're getting all the levels right, because we have the same mics that we use for everyone or that are in use in the studio before we get there, so we're getting all of the levels and everything appropriate on the mixer. We ask everyone what they've eaten today. And so I wanted...
Natural conversation.
And hysterical, because people eat some weird stuff. And that's, we don't...
Weird combinations.
In weird combinations.
Right.
We haven't been recording it, but now I'm like, we need to start recording it and then have like...
We have the for a while.
Oh, goodness. Thank you, Anna. I hope you're saying
Surprise!
Surprise.
They're all coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, like have a really fun episode where it's just all of our guests from the past 6 months and the weird things that they ate that day.
What Oklahoma eats?
Should be a segment on the show of just like the unbeknownst guest.
Right.
They'll never know.
And we won't...
Little did they know.
We won't tell them.
Food tips. I like to have cold pizza with ranch dressing from 3 weeks ago.
Or it'll be like a tuna salad sandwich and a piece of pie.
With peanut butter on the
course.
tuna salad sandwich.
I've asked people like, so what'd you have for breakfast or lunch? And like, oh, I haven't eaten anything yet. I'm like, how do you
understand
survive?
How people can do that. How do you function?
And you're like,
Happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And we record at night.
you do too. And it's like, I better not hear your stomach on this mic. Like,
how often do y'all edit out any of the mouth gurgles?
only if they're really bad. Sometimes if we have people that do the before every, oh, hi, today I'm Kayla. I can't edit
My
that out
favorite
'cause
is
they
the,
can't stop. But then we start doing it.
Right.
That one's one that's like,
That's so interesting.
yeah, contagious. Ugh.
The worst for me is the nose whistles, because like God bless them, because
don't have
I set myself up for failure because I tell these people, okay, now eat the mic.
I didn't say snort the mic.
Yeah. Like I can hear your nose hairs vibrating.
Yeah, I would cut out the excessive uhs, ums, buts, and the
Yeah.
clicks if I can. I try to leave a little bit every now and then, depending on like how it transitions from one thing to the next, just to make it sound more natural. But I try to go through and cut that out because it also like shortens the podcast too, especially if you just want to like, you can cut like a minute of that stuff out
Yeah,
sometimes.
there's a surprising amount sometimes in there.
excessively long pauses for us. If they're like, and then they're like
I
checking
totally-
notes, and you're like, anyway, well, they're
Yeah.
it's fine. They're not checking their notes or anything. We just like wanted to talk again.
Yeah, I'll cut out excessive because I'll have excessive pauses too from every now and then because like we think we're not sure if they're done telling the story, or stuff like that.
Well, especially as an interviewer, sometimes like you ask a question and then the answer. And a little interview tip for your listeners is don't respond right away. Like let those pregnant pauses breathe because they may have more to say. Oddly enough, the human, like just the way that human beings communicate, we don't like dead silence. So as an interviewer, shut up and and let the person talk. And they'll, sometimes the best nuggets of whatever they have to say happens right after that pregnant pause.
Sometimes they're not good at being interviewed at all.
That's also true.
Sometimes it's people who, for whatever reason, are responsible with being the one to be interviewed and maybe shouldn't be. And you have to deal with that also. How to make them try to be somewhat successful interview.
Yeah.
It's even worse when they're on camera. They're
for sure.
super
That's a
nervous.
whole-
Like I have
that's
to
a
sit
whole
there and coach. Like I always tell my guests for Uncovered Oklahoma, I was like, "This is not live. We can edit things." And I will make them do multiple takes sometimes, just if they fumble, because I want them to look good, and they appreciate it in the end.
That's actually why we stopped doing, because we used to broadcast our episode recording sessions on Facebook Live, and we stopped doing that because like to introduce way too much flap sweat. I'm just like because they think that unfortunately I'm a bad communicator, so like that was the one part that I always forgot to tell them. Hey, you're gonna be on camera. Might be something they'd like to know. Like, granted, we don't get a whole lot of hits on YouTube. It's more for SEO purposes and all that kind of stuff to put video out on our website and all that, which I'm sure we'll get to SEO and marketing.
No, we
but
won't.
I gave him that eye contact, like, come back to that soon.
but for the guest,
note.
that's another thing that I've learned is like give them as much information, including the fact that they're going to be on freaking camera. Like, don't blindside your guests.
Yeah. A couple good things that I've picked up, at least I think they're good, is not to over-edit, because then it just doesn't sound natural. And just leaving some of those ums in there because it's natural, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, SEO. We did talk about it. You touched upon it.
SEO.
You can create the best podcast in the world, but if no one's listening to it,
If no one can find it.
If no one can find it, is it even alive? So how do you get the word out?
That old, if the podcast is not heard, does it exist argument?
Exactly. So how do you get listeners? How do you get that user base? What did you do?
Just kind of a general marketing thing. You got to throw out some modesty. Like you need to push it. Like every time you release a new episode, push it on your personal social media. Every episode, because you think maybe everyone's listening to it. They're not, because if you're on social media, like they don't see it all the time
Even
too.
Your best friends, your husband, your big brother, sometimes they don't listen to it. And then you have to explain the same stories that you just recorded for all of the public to hear.
Why aren't you my number one fan?
Why aren't you sharing this on your Facebook?
Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree with that more. That's something, Anna and I both come from communications backgrounds, and so that was something going into this. We knew before we recorded our demo and then I think one more test show, but we were like, no, before we knocked down our social media, we were like, let's grab up all of our social media handles. Let's grab up our Gmail address. We did take a year to get our website up and our blog because we were like, we're not going to do a blog. We don't want to be a blog. And then we were like, oh my God, this would be so much easier just put into a blog and link to. So we did that for our own sake, and it helps a ton with SEO. But just like being present on social media, finding your fans where they are. I know Instagram has been a huge platform for us. And it's super great because it integrates perfectly with our SoundCloud. So I can share our SoundCloud in our story every Thursday morning whenever our new episode comes out. And then we do a post that's slightly different across each channels, as well as a blog post each morning, so that we're always hitting people where they're at.
Nice.
Well, and using the right hashtags helps a lot. because we have a lot of content that's related to food or that's related to beer, and just those hashtags that people are using, like, can't think of any offhand, but
Food.
Drink OKC, OKC
Yeah.
Foodies, Brunch, OKC Podcast, Oklahoma Podcast. That's something that I did for any of our content surrounding this event here today. And so I actually have a giant hashtag document because I'm a social media manager by trade for a living. So I'm insane about hashtags. But then I pick out and I copy and paste in the right ones that are relevant to the content that we're talking about at that time. And then we see about 20% of our traffic on at least our Instagram posts from outside people that are finding us from the hashtag that weren't already following us. So that's how you're going to bring in new people. And then people are like, oh, what is this? Oh, it's a podcast. Oh, and then we have our link tree in all of our bios with our link, and so that links out to where you can get it on iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher and Spotify and all of the different places, and just meeting people where they're at. The number one question I think we get when people come in to record for us is, when is this going to be on? Because we record at a radio station, so people are always like, when's it going to be on the radio? And we're like, oh, it's going to go on the internet forever.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a sweet spot to hashtags.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Well, you're going to get cut off at like 50. I would say about 30.
I think it's like
I suggest
30 they cut you
3,000.
off.
You up
yeah.
at 30? Is it 30 now?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
now.
Yeah.
I think
they've
they-
changed.
It's around 30 now.
I don't even think I can even
That's-
come up with 50 hashtags.
I come up with, and I just use the ones that are relevant, but I'll use at least like 3 that are location based. And so we're in Norman right now, so I would have talked about Norman. But if we're in Midtown, we'll talk about Midtown, Deep Deuce, Auto Alley. Like, we have a lot of event based things. And then we'll also talk about like hashtag OKC events, and then hashtag beer if it's beer, food. And I just like, sometimes I have stuff that's just about local. We have a branded hashtag Localites OKC that I also use personally if we're doing stuff for the podcast, but it's not on the podcast's feed. And so it's about getting a good mix of different things so that you're hitting people when they are searching for Oklahoma City food. Oh, well, we just happened to interview the chef of this restaurant that just opened or that just moved and opened a new version or whatever that is, and find them with what they want when they're looking for it.
Have you guys ever put a post and then within all your hashtags that are completely and totally relevant to what you're talking about, just been like, what's trending? Dave Chappelle. I have done that.
Right? No, because I'm morally opposed to that.
That is a cheat.
I've
done it just to see if it works.
And did it work?
Yeah.
It kind of did.
Kind of did.
I don't suggest that.
That would be authentic engagement for us, since we're so niche within the Oklahoma City and surrounding area community.
Right.
That, like, we could do that. We could put money behind our posts. We could boost our posts. We could do whatever that is. But we're pretty much hitting the local community, just doing everything organically the right way. That I have.
I've only tried that once or twice because I thought it'd be funny.
No, and I'm sure it was.
that fits with what you do, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's totally on brand. No, like whenever the Star Wars thing came out, I remember like doing. Well, first of all, we do a Mystery Science Theater style Star Wars viewing, where 2 of the co-hosts get high. I don't smoke, but but they are hilarious, and I just watch them in shame.
He's like, I'm funny without any substances.
No, I learned early on that God will not let me have fun with that. I cannot have fun. I've tried it, doesn't end well. I kind of turn into that screaming person in a panic. So don't go to the dark side of all that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all.
No. But watching them is really fun. But anyway, so we would do like topical episodes almost to jump on board the hashtag trending stuff. Like whenever the new X-Men movie came out, we actually had a sketch, because now we film sketches that we release on YouTube. And like it didn't even occur to us until we actually finally got a final cut of it, of like, oh, great, there's an actual X-Men movie coming up like in a month. Well, we know when we're releasing this monster.
So that's just strategic. I applaud you for that one.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Keep a couple episodes in the bank and
Right.
release at the appropriate time.
Yeah.
Yeah. another helpful tip is to encourage your guests to share it too. That's how I've grown all my shows is because the guests will also share it too.
I think that's in our guest agreement.
It is, but it does not always happen.
I get personally offended sometimes when some places just don't feature. Like, I made this really awesome video about you, and you haven't shared it on your social media yet.
That's a fear, though, of like, man, did you not have a good time on the show? Oh, God, what did I say? What did I do?
Yeah. So I think to kind of wrap this up, what keeps you going? Podcasting is a lot of work, contrary to popular belief. You're like, hey, I'm just going to record audio and put it on the internet, and this is going to be great. It does take a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of planning. Sometimes it takes a lot of planning. It takes some production, and everyone has other lives too, right? So what keeps you going, and what motivated you to keep at it?
Money.
That was the best joke you've had all night.
All right, and
Not
we're
at
done.
all.
Thanks for watching.
Dollar bills.
And we'll see you tomorrow. No. In a perfect world, man. If only we could all be Joe Rogan. No,
Isn't that why you started?
I just want to be Joe Rogan, man.
See, and I want to be Karen Kilgariff, so.
Right. Yeah.
Just want to be welcome to Night Vale.
I think for me, because we've been doing it for long enough that we have a nice momentum with just Okie Show Show kind of as a brand as all in itself. Because now we're not just podcasts. Now we're also sketches, and now we also do live events and stuff, and we do live script reads, and we do improv shows and the occasional stand-up show and that kind of thing. So it's kind of become, something much, to me, it feels much more important than what it was in the very beginning of I've got a great idea. Now I feel like
It's like, I know I have a great idea.
well, no, it's kind of where could this thing go? We put 4 years into it, and we're not planning on stopping anytime soon, and our guests keep getting, a little more known. So
some more and more famous people. You had the guy from Film Riot
recently, freaking Ryan Connolly on, and he's that was insane. That was the season finale of our last season. And that guy, Ryan Connolly, for me, was one of the biggest influences of my young adulthood. He was one of the main guys that I watched and obsessed over his work to get into filmmaking in the first place. And now I'm sitting and talking to the guy. So it's kind of well, let's see where this goes. Let's see how this plays out. Because every single time we talk to somebody, there is really important stuff that they talk about. There's the fun, just surface level stuff. But then there's also a lot of just nuggets of wisdom and sources of joy and stuff that are much more fulfilling than I ever expected. Yeah. So to me, it's become much more of a blessing than anything. And I just want to see where it goes.
Yeah, I do agree. When you get that person coming on, you're like, wow.
Why are you here?
Yeah, they obviously see some value in this, and then you get that motivation internally being like, okay, I must be doing something right.
Right, yeah.
I must be doing something right. All right.
Yeah. Keep this going.
I've been really surprised for some of our episodes. We just did a Route 66 episode, and for part of that, we just traveled on Route 66, and we were, just trying to hit up all these different places to find ghost stories on the spot, because sometimes you can Google and you can kind of get an idea, but we were just surprised how many good stories we've been getting this season, where we just go hey, do you have any ghost stories? And well, as a matter of fact, there is some spooky stuff going on. and we've gotten some really good stories. We found stuff that's not published online, and we're the first place to first media outlet to kind of talk about these ghost stories. And just so that's been really motivating for, as of late, it's just been really exciting. But we do have kind of a sort of an end game in plan, so.
Ooh, to be revealed.
Ooh. Gonna pull a Breaking Bad season 6. El Camino coming out soon.
6 seasons in a movie!
Yeah.
Well, kind of like what Brian was saying, with just like the doors that it's opened for us has been really awesome because like she said earlier, we have always been very connected in the community, and like we do volunteer a lot and we do like to go to events a lot, and
Getting so much more free food.
he's not wrong. But yeah, it's been really nice for us to kind of use the podcast as an entryway to meet people that we want to meet, or to meet organizations that we're interested in, or things that are new that we want everyone to know more about. It's been a really great platform to help spread the word about just a lot of new stuff that isn't always the best about doing. They're not always the best about promoting themselves. So for us to kind of help them do that has been really rewarding.
I was going to say, I never feel bad, and I'm sure there's some people out there, Core 4 and OK Cider Co., they're super annoyed with me, perpetually asking, when are you going to open? How's it going? How's construction going? But it's like, we want to be there, and we want to help the community find out about all of these incredible businesses that are opening up and organizations that are having these awesome fundraisers. Like, we truly feel like, I don't want to be like, but we're doing a public service. We're doing free marketing for them. Like, we have already identified this as something that our listeners are going to be interested and want to learn more about, because we are interested and we want to learn more about. So I never feel bad like reaching out to people or like bothering people and being like, hey, did you think about this yet? Hey, did you have time to do this yet? Because I feel like we're providing such an awesome service for them to just help them get out there.
Yeah, I don't feel like people get super annoyed with me, like asking for, hey, can I have you on the show or anything?
Can I please promote your business for free?
Yeah.
Please come on.
Granted, I will run into people not responding because, they're super busy and everything. But
So on the not responding, how often is too often to follow up, and when do you stop?
That's a good question.
Well, I usually will follow up if it's been longer than a week without a response. And then if I follow up, so I'll do the initial contact. I'll follow up if it's been longer than a week. If we're really interested, I'll follow up one more time. If we don't care that much, then we'll move on, because we have our tentative list of things we want to do. So it's kind of like first choice, second choice, third choice. But then if it's more than 2 asks after the initial, then we just stop, or we will try to find a way, like through someone else we know, like, hey, we've been trying to reach this person. Like, is there maybe someone better we should be reaching out to? Because it's not always
certain
the right
channels, like
person.
they don't respond, like email. Some businesses don't check their email.
Some businesses have the wrong email listed places.
Yeah, or they just only on one social media that they kind of check on, or they just, kind of like auto post from one. So that's kind of been kind of a struggle for me as well. But I'm kind of the same way. I usually ask them, I'll ask like once, and then I'll wait like a week, try maybe a different method to get in touch with them.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll send a
like
letter.
To do, I like to do emails. I think emails more professional, but like we do stuff through Instagram messaging too. But once it becomes serious, I like to move it to email.
Yes, that's kind of how we approach it as well. Make the initial contact and be like, let's move this conversation over to email.
yeah, and
I'm always-
Instagram, just FYI, if they don't follow you, it kind of goes to their spam and it's not easily seen. So Instagram is probably one of the worst ways to reach out to somebody that you have like no connection with.
For us, since we're approaching a lot more, now we're reaching out to a lot of like actors and we're trying to get like Hanson on the show now, which is like maybe maybe
People
Make
who
them
have
bring you
people.
beer.
dude. Well, and it's actually really interesting when you're reaching out to kind of known people of the weird routes that you do have to take, because it's not like you can go to a website and find their contact info. A lot of times you're trying to find their manager or their publicist, or
You just
like
tweet them and are like praying.
right, yeah. So like we're trying to get Kara Haywood on, and she was the lead in what was the name of she was the lead in a movie that was shot up in Bartlesville, but she was in a Wes Anderson movie, the one with the Boy Scouts, the 2 kids. She was the girl.
Moonlight Kingdom.
Moonlight Kingdom, yeah. So the way that I have had to get a hold of her.
I'm going to beat you at trivia later tonight.
Yeah, no, I'm so bad with movie names, it's insane. But the way that we've had to get a hold of her is that her boyfriend is a friend of mine who is the roommate of a closer friend of mine in California. So I've had to like badger my bud who is just like in the room with her to be like, hey, you know, there's a podcast that you should be on. And my prayer is that she'll be like, what? A podcast? Absolutely.
Just like casually putting it on every time she comes into the room. Just like
but
presses play.
some of the bigger names that we've had on the show have totally been that way of just like total random. Oh, I know a person who knows the person I want to get a hold of. So I'm like with Hanson, I'm friends with their old road manager. Come to find out, like it just kept popped up in conversation, and I was like, you don't say. He's neighbors with their mom. So I was like, can you talk to their mom, Mama Hanson, and get me in contact with their manager? For the love of God, if we could get Mbop on the show, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, we always try to do a personal route first if we can, which a lot of the stuff we have been able to do that. But when we're doing those kind of blind asks, that's when it can be a little more difficult.
You don't want to feel like a creep.
Yeah.
Which can
never
be easy.
feel like a creep.
Although that's another positive thing for us about having a studio in like a third-party space. We're not inviting people into our homes or into our office, so it is like a little less uneasy if you are interviewing a stranger.
Please step into the back of my garage.
Right, here's my...
And
welcome to my
here's my
bedroom.
closet.
Ignore these chainsaws on the wall. We will be going right through here. You go first. Please go in.
And that's why I'm portable. I just show up to where they are comfortable with or where they're at, usually. That's hoping to have a studio pretty soon. So eventually I'm going to do the big capital campaign. Have a
Nice.
Yeah, I think having the ability to do field recordings as opposed to like just being married to your location is an asset for that very reason of like if something doesn't work out with your location where there's a double booking that happens, which happens with us a lot because we're recording above Tower Theater. So if there's a show happening, I guess we can't do the interview. So luckily,
we technically have mobile equipment. We just haven't learned how to use it yet. I don't know if that was familiar. Like,
We want to, though. We want to explore that.
yeah, but doing field recordings in their place of business or residence or whatever, you know, sometimes can lead to really cool parts of the conversation and stuff. So
yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? Oh, it looks like you guys did a. Oh.
Sure. I was going to say, how much did any of you know about podcasting before you got started, and how many podcasts did you listen to? Were you like huge fans already?
That is a fantastic question. So the question was,
how many podcasts, or how familiar were you with podcasts
yes.
before you got started, and then did you listen to any?
wow, I can't believe I just totally blanked on that.
Okay, I had you.
That happens on air sometimes.
I guess you go first then. Give us your answer.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I am a huge podcast nerd, so I haven't listened to like the radio in probably 4 years. I am full on podcasts and audiobooks. I've got at least one podcast that comes out a day, especially on like Thursdays. I've got like 5, so that I'm like up to date on. And then when there's like a series that comes out and I have to binge the whole thing, it's fine. Some of them are y'all's, some of them are ours, and some of them are a lot of national ones, big ones, that have been going on for 5-6 years. And so I have been listening to podcasts for a long time. I actually took a class in college in 2013 at Oklahoma State on media communications, and I produced video, and they had me produce a podcast in GarageBand. So I learned how to edit podcasts and do ambient noise and put different files together all into one and export it. And so I got really lucky in that case, and then also already just like loving podcasts and being obsessed with podcasts as a medium. And then Anna, who is just my best friend, and so along for the ride for some of that. I'll let you go for yours.
Well, for me, I went to a college where we had a college radio station, and so I had a show on that for 5 out of my 8 semesters in school, and it was a music-based show. It was an alternative indie rock radio station, but I had a show where I would also interview people or have guests on, so I kind of had that background. And but at that time, like, I don't even think I knew what podcasts were or if that was even a thing yet. This was like '08 to 2012. So your class was pretty like cutting edge on offering a class that actually talked about that, because I never even realized when I was starting out with that degree that podcasting was maybe going to be something of an option one day. Then after that, I never listened to podcasts. I still don't hardly listen to podcasts. I listen to Tales Unveiled, though. I do. And I'll listen to one-offs of things like randomly. But I am that terrestrial radio person. I have an HD radio on my desk at work, and I really don't listen that much. But sometimes I'll listen to stuff that my husband listens to, like mostly Adam Carolla.
That was the Podfather. Just one more note on that. So for ours, my background in listening to a ton of podcasts really helped us, especially when we introduced music and transitions and openers and closers. I really played off of emulating some of my favorite podcasts. And so when we were deciding how to integrate, like we picked our song and then we were like, but now what do we do with it? And so figuring out how we were going to do the transitions and how we were going to edit that in, I really like copied my favorite people.
That's the best way to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah, my background was just doing video production, so going to, just from video just to straight up audio was pretty smooth for me. I listened to some of the podcasts that really inspired Tales Unveiled is The Black Tapes and Welcome to Night Vale. And those, so I kind of listened to them for how they did music and things, because that's what I wanted. I didn't want it to be like a typical talk show. I wanted it to be kind of like this sort of docudrama. So I listened to a bunch of different stuff like that.
And for me, my introduction to podcasting was Harmontown, which is it's recorded in front of a live audience. So whenever I was initially like this today, whenever like the original conception of the Okie Show Show was going to be in front of a live audience, and it was actually going to be me and Lucas Ross.
I was gonna.
He's super busy.
Yeah, no, he's got a couple things going on.
Yeah.
With the show part of your name.
Yeah, so that's kind of where that came from, was that we were a show that was going to talk about shows, but it was also going to be the Okie Show in front of a live studio audience. And then we realized that would take too much work to get that many people. And also, it's to me, for myself, it's kind of an arrogant notion to imagine that I can draw enough people because nobody knows who I am. But
it's tough.
And that's I come from radio production and film production, but I also was a musician for many, many years, and drawing an audience. In Oklahoma, drawing an audience is freaking difficult because we're all lazy.
I was going to say, because we all have to drive to get everywhere.
Yeah, because we're so
just
spread out.
Super hard.
Jeez, you go to New York City and you just pop in anywhere and it's an amazing show. Here, no one has faith in anything. They're like, is it going to be good?
Is it worth the drive?
Yeah. Is it worth driving for an hour?
Is it worth putting on pants and leaving my house?
Exactly.
Even if the drive is 5 minutes?
Well, and also nowadays, everybody's gotten so used to being able to sit at home and watch live streams and stuff. And so
without their pants.
That's actually why my wife and I kind of stopped playing live music, was because no one would put their pants on. No one would leave their home.
And it wasn't a no pants show.
It was, yeah. We did one no pants show. Fool me once, shame on me. But so Harmontown was my introduction to podcasting. And then I got super inspired whenever Stephen Colbert took over The Late Show. So and then listening to Chris Hardwick on the Nerdist podcast, I wanted to do something like that. The improv elements of Harmontown, the talk show elements of The Late Show, and then the conversational elements of the Nerdist show with Chris Hardwick. I just loved all of everything about everything that they were doing, and then luckily coming from terrestrial radio and understanding stingers and intro music and how all the production that goes into putting a show together, I already knew how to do all that, and then I knew how to, through film production experience, how to make it even better. That's where it all came from originally.
Nice. Any other questions?
I guess that's a wrap. I guess everybody, we'll plug our things real fast. Talesandveil.com. You can listen to new episodes every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts.
We are Localites OKC on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Gmail, and .com, and you can listen to new episodes every Thursday.
And myself and my ghost co-host here are with Okie Show Show, and you can find us online at okieshowshow.com or Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Okie Show Show. Or you can just check me out on Facebook and be like, why are you saying that on Facebook? And troll me, which is what
Awesome.
happens
Awesome.
all the time.
And I'm Nabeel, with a co-host of the OKC Foodcast and co-host of Talking Real. And you can find that on Instagram, Facebook, and online. So thank you, panelists. I think this was a very enlightening conversation. And until next time.
All right, that's it for Art and Victory.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Bye.
Bye.